All right, Council, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'll remind everyone to please disclose of any pecuniary interest at the appropriate time and that we are live on YouTube. And we will go to the minutes of the previous council meeting of April 25th, 2022. Do we have a mover and a seconder to receive and file those? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Westgate. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of receiving and filing those? That is carried. We have no business arising from those previous minutes. So we will go to scheduled meetings and events. They're all kind of laid out for us there. Just a reminder that AMO is coming and the deadline is fast approaching for delegations for AMO. I know we have quite a few on the list already. So if anyone thinks of anything else, just let Amanda or Trevor know. And we will go to councillors' commitments and items. And we will start with Councillor Mitchell. Do you have anything for council?
Nothing to say, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
As far as the dates go, I'm not going to be available June 1st to the 7th and August 6th to the 18th. I got a call about really bad potholes at the end of First School Road at Churchill. Need some cold patch on it by the looks of it. And that's all I've got.
All right. I'm sure I can see that our staff are taking a note of that as we speak, and that will get corrected promptly. Thank you for that. Councillor Westgate, do you have anything for council today?
I'd just like to thank Andrew for getting the street swept in front of the arena for the race there. It was one hell of a mess, and he did a good job of getting it good for the race. And you can add June 24th to the 28th on mine. I'm away most of June and July.
Okay. It's a good month to take off. And Councillor White, do you have anything for council today?
For council tonight, thank you.
Thank you. I just had a couple of little things. One is I wanted to thank our Watford Optimist. They took over the Watford Road Race a couple of years ago and have done a fantastic job keeping that alive and well in our community. We had a couple of years hiatus because of COVID, and it was such an honor to be there and see all those runners. We had 300 runners in the race this year. And it was just great to see the smiles on people's faces as they accomplished that goal of finishing that race. So it was just fantastic. And a reminder that the Beach Bump volleyball tournament is coming up and registration is open for that as well. And I'm sure our staff are excited about bringing in all of that sand. And I look at Ryan, he's like, oh goodness. It is a fun event though, and something that I know the community is looking forward to as well. So that's all I had. We will go on to staff items. I don't see anything, but just to confirm, we have nothing for staff items tonight. So we'll go on to the accounts and the GL report. Mr. Treasurer, do you have anything to highlight for the GL report for us?
The only thing that's a real change is the gravel's now been put into the expenditures for the year. So it's going to look like we're ahead there, but once you go through the cycles of it, we're fine. So it looks good.
Great. Any questions? We need a motion to receive and file that. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor Mitchell. We are going to go on to non-action correspondence. Is there anything council wants to highlight from the non-action correspondence today? As always, it's quite extensive. Seems to be getting longer every time, doesn't it? I just was noticing that today. It's just very, extreme. But so if there's nothing that anyone wants to highlight, then we need a motion to receive and file the remainder. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor Mitchell. All in favor of that. Thank you. And we'll move on to the action correspondence. We have a few items there. We'll just go down the list. The first was the Petrolia YMCA request for donation. Second was the Foundation Emergence Report for International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. And third was the Lambton Group Police Services Board COVID relief funding request.
That one we did last year, didn't we?
I believe that is...
We should do it again.
I believe it's something that we don't really have much choice on the matter. because the COVID made it so that you had to increase the number of times that the precincts were cleaned. And so it really increased the overall budget. So that's what they're asking for. So, and they've made a specific request here. I believe of 5,000 from our COVID fund, right? We have room in that fund still, Trevor?
We had $54,000 allocated as of the end of the year. If we're taking it from there, we'll be fine.
Okay, so if we're going to go ahead with that, we need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Westgate and Councillor Mitchell. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. We will move on to staff reports, and we're going to start with the land acknowledgement report. We need a mover and a seconder to get that recommendation on the floor. Councillor Mitchell and Councillor White. Any discussion? I just wanted to say thank you to our First Nations neighbors who helped us with that, and to Stephanie Catrice. She worked very tirelessly on this, and I think that it's a good step in the right direction.
I was just wondering how often you're going to say this, just at the first meeting of the new council?
I think it's just something that's going to be posted in the buildings from what I've read, but do you want to clarify that, Trevor?
I can actually turn that over to Stephanie to answer that. She'll have the answer.
So what we have put in the policy was that it would be posted publicly at prominent areas in the township, including the Warwick Township Office, Watford Museum, the East Lambton Community Complex, the library, as well as the Warwick Community Hall. Read aloud by the clerk at the inaugural meeting of Warwick Township Council and such other meetings of Warwick Township Council where the mayor is elected or appointed, and read aloud by the mayor and his or her designated representative of Warwick Township Council at the introduction of ceremonies, meetings, gatherings, events, or presentations where appropriate.
Thank you for that clarification, Stephanie. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of that recommendation? Thank you. That is carried. And we'll move on to the municipal elections update. So this is just a report that needs to be received and filed for information. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor Mitchell. Questions or comments on that report? Just a reminder to the community that the nomination period is open and you're welcome to put your nomination forward. Seeing no questions or comments, all in favor of receiving and filing that report. That is carried. Thank you. And we'll go to the waste and recycling pickup local improvements rate. There is a recommendation by staff there. Do we have a mover and a seconder to have that put on the floor? Councillor Mitchell and Councillor White, discussion.
The only thing that bothers me about this a little bit is I thought the garbage was going to be like the water and the sewer, where the user paid. People with bare farmland are going to have their taxes go towards garbage. And I thought we weren't doing that because this is going to come out of the general account, is it not?
The proposal here is to take it out of reserves that have been accumulated over the year, not from taxation.
Is that not still tax dollars?
Most of the reserves are accumulated by user fee accumulation over the years rather than tax dollars. Tax dollars wise, we run almost on par to cover our operating costs.
Councillor Westgate.
I thought we were doing it this way so bare farmland does not get charged. It's only if you have a house or you have a bin that you get charged. So it's a user pay system.
Yeah, I was just afraid this extra money was coming out of the general account, which is the bare farmland paying taxes. So I'm happy with it then.
All right, any other comments or questions? All in favor of that recommendation? That is carried. And we'll move on to D, which is the Gilliland Gertz drain. We have a recommendation by staff there. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Westgate. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor of that recommendation? That is carried. And we'll go on to disconnecting from work policy. There's a recommendation that the report right to disconnect legislation be received and filed, and that the disconnecting from work policy be approved and added to the corporate policy manual. So we need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Morris, thank you. Any questions or comments on that report? All in favor? That is carried. And we have the proposed newsletter content. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that. Moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Any questions or comments, additions that you would like to see added to that? All right, then we look forward to seeing that. I'm sure Stephanie's already working hard on that newsletter, and we've had good positive feedback about our newsletters. So all in favor of receiving and filing that. That is carried. And very exciting, Canada Day update report. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that recommendation, or to approve that recommendation. Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Westgate. Questions or comments? Councillor Morris.
Yeah, they've requested $2,500 for fireworks, and we're proposing $1,500 in the report, from what I understood. I'd like to up that to 2,000 with the rising costs and everything. I want them to have at least as good a show.
Ryan, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Morris. They're requesting $2,500 in total, and council approves annually through their annual donation list 1,000. So it's actually an additional $1,500 for a total donation to the fireworks of $2,500.
So I understand we're giving $2,500 then. Okay, I misunderstood it.
Total.
That's good then. Thank you.
Okay. And as noted, it's noted in the report, we are planning a Canada Day celebration here in Watford, and that's scheduled for July 2nd. And to begin at 4:00. And I'm sure all of council will be happy to come out and serve hot dogs. And that's one of my favorite times anyway.
2 years ago, we missed 2 years.
I know, it's been 2 years. So it'll be wonderful to be back out and serving our community. Any other questions or comments about those reports? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. We'll move on to H, which is the Culvert 45 Tender Award recommendation. We have a recommendation by staff there. We need a mover and a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Westgate. Questions or comments on that recommendation? See.
I like that it's under budget.
Yep, we always like that. It's always a good thing to have it under budget. So all in favor of that? That is carried. And we're just zipping along. So we'll go on to 14A, which is the minutes of the special council meeting of May 9th. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file those minutes. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Westgate. Questions or comments on that? All in favor? That is carried. And the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting of May 18th. Need a mover and a seconder to receive and file. Thank you, Councillor White and Councillor Mitchell. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor? That is carried. And we have the minutes from the Warwick Township Cemetery Board meeting of May 25th. And we need a mover and a seconder to receive and file those. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor Mitchell. Chair Morris, do you want to comment on that?
This was our first meeting of the year, so we did a tour of all the cemeteries. So we were started at 9 o'clock, and I think we were back here in the office at 11:30. The committee came up with some really good ideas and are recommending that we go ahead with the expansion at Warwick Cemetery.
Okay, any questions on that recommendation? And I did hear, I have had a couple of calls from Warwick residents who were unhappy with the Warwick Cemetery, and I've been assured that that will be kept much better in the future. We're going to keep an eye on that, and we apologize to all of our residents for that not being cut as quickly and promptly as it should have been. So that is definitely on the radar for the committee, I'm sure, and for staff as well. All right, all in favor of receiving, no. Yep, the whole in favor of receiving and filing those minutes, that is carried. And we have one thing for new business, which I believe is just a reminder to council that we will be making nominations for the Senior of the Year Award at the June council meeting. And we are ahead of schedule, ladies and gentlemen. So, because we are going into the next item will be to go in camera. We're going to have to take a little bit of a break. We have to stay on the agenda schedule for our delegation. So we're going to have to, because we have your delegation listed here under 6:30, we're going to have to take a 15-minute. I'm being suggested by my clerk that if Peter is here, we could start early if you're comfortable with that, unless you had someone else that you wanted to come and join us.
Oh, just myself and my wife.
Well, you're welcome, Peter, to come on up. We welcome you to our table. And if anyone,
This is my wife, Beverly.
Beverly, if you want to come on up, you're welcome as well. Yeah, we're very casual. Unfortunately, now that we have to be on YouTube and everything else, we have to use the FM system. So in order to do that, all you have to do is press the button in front of you and we can give you the floor.
Yep. Okay, so my name's Pete Leduc. My wife's Beverly. We're both retired. I worked for Nova Chemicals for 34 years, and my wife was a professional person at the hospital. So we've been on 6246 Churchill Line for 33 years. We actually built there. I do a lot of dog walking. Some of you may have seen me walk down the Forest Road, Churchill Line, both ways. So I usually do about 3 hours a day, and I've been doing that for 33 years. So I've seen a lot of garbage on the side of the road, in the ditch, collected a lot of garbage. Beer can, I can tell you there's been everything under the sun. One example I gave Amanda was a couple years ago, there was a young lady in a van stopped on the side of the road. I said, "Are you in distress? Do you need some assistance?" She said, "No." And then I saw that she was changing her baby's diaper and she threw the poopy diaper in the ditch when she left. So she didn't want it in the van with her. But I mean, that's just an example. Every spring, we have the McGill drain comes down to our property where it turns into the Bear Creek tie-in, and the back of our property is Bear Creek as well. So in the wintertime, it's actually it's worse in the spring because you have the thaw, everything that's in the creek gets carried down, and because the drain is fairly clear and our creek is, it's got fallen trees and things in there. So everything kind of gets collected at our property and then goes to the next property. But we've had everything. I think you saw my note. There's been barrels, bottles, a lot of tarps, tires with rims. I still have a tire lodged in the creek behind our place that, I don't know, I guess maybe it's good for the fish or something. But anyways, my concern is I thought maybe we had a bylaw that would deal with littering. So, and I really wanted to direct it at intentional littering. My wife and I were driving down the road and the car passed us and threw out a pizza box, hit the windshield, and the guy kept going as he was eating his pizza. I mean, each of you have had these experiences, I'm sure. A lot of beer cans, beer bottles, that's another issue. But I thought, and I've done a lot of traveling in North America with my job. I was an inspector. And a lot of the communities have littering bylaws. They have littering signs. Typically what I've seen is a $500 fine. They're not a very big sign. I think if we could have a bylaw and post it, I mean, even if it deters one person, it's going to make a difference. And if people know there's a bylaw, maybe they'll pay more attention to the people that are throwing the pizza boxes out and the beer cans and everything else and say, hey, you know, and I know it starts with education in the schools. And where we're located, we're on the corner of all the different townships. So, you know, Enniskillen and Brook, you know, we're right there. So it would actually be nice to see if we could drag the other ones into it too, and all be together. And I'm thinking Lambton County. So, and I'm willing to take, you know, some effort to do this, obviously. So, you know, a friend of mine worked at Nova with me, Bob Bailey. Everybody knows Bob Bailey. And Bob seems to get things done. So I don't know whether to talk with him. I haven't done that yet. But, you know, like I said, there's election signs up. Some of the old election signs were still there 3 weeks ago in the ditch by our place, you know, like, and even car crashes. I know I asked Amanda, you know, who's responsible for cleaning up after car crashes? Because sometimes there's, you know, everything, hoods, fenders, mud flaps, that kind of thing. We shouldn't have to do that. The township road crew shouldn't have to do that. And I know they're good. I see them. They drive up and down. They pick up whatever they see. Like I'll drag tires out of the ditch and put them on the side of the road. I don't know. Whoever's picking it up here will verify that they've seen this stuff that I've dragged out there. Signs, I've dragged that stuff out, you know. But I think there's a step we can. Sorry, I think there's a step we can take as a township to sort of lead. We've got one of the big disposal places here. They do a good job of cleaning up. They're always sweeping, you know, I'm impressed with what they do. So we can leverage through training. I think you've seen my note, doing it at the local schools. We might even be able to do some, you know, field trips for the schools. Get the kids involved. You know, I mean, if you got your kid in the car with you and you're going to throw garbage out the window and he's been at school and they're being taught, hey, you don't do that. There's a law against that. You know, they're going to say, Dad, you know, you could get fined for this, right? I mean, so I don't know. I'd like to find somebody, whether it's Amanda or who, and work. I'd be willing to work with you to go over some of my ideas, and everybody here would have ideas. And just work with the partnership and try and get this going so that, you know, our community, and right now it doesn't look too bad, right? I mean, the grass is green. It hides a lot of stuff. I noticed on the way into town here, the grass was cut by our new sign out there. You can see the litter in the ditch when the grass is cut. When the grass isn't cut, it hides it, but it's still there. So, you know, maybe we can even promote, you know, the residents through our newsletter, which is a good newsletter, like you said. I like it. Promote waste management and beautification. Maybe have, you know, an award to some of the people in the community for taking action to clean up their road or whatever. And like I said, the cleanup is one thing. Everybody doesn't mind cleaning up a bit, but it's the people that are throwing the garbage down that just don't care. Those are the people I'd like to get at. The stuff that ends up in the ditch behind my place and in front, a lot of it comes from the farms. You get a big windstorm, it blows stuff in there. It's not done intentionally. It gets away, everybody knows that. But I mean, we can go back and pick it up too, right? So that's what I want to do. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, Peter, I'd like to thank you for bringing this to council, because this has been always a passion of mine as well. The littering is insane, and you're absolutely right. And it's not just in our municipality, it is across Ontario, but it starts with little steps of one person walking down the road and picking up garbage, and somebody sees that one person doing that and they might think twice about throwing a beer can out the window the next time, or they might somebody else sees that and they decide, well, I'm going for a walk anyway, I might as well bring a garbage bag with me. And so this is the way it happens, right? The ripple in the water, one suggestion can lead to big change. Now, Amanda, I know you wrote to Peter about some of the initiatives that the township has already undertaken. And so do you want to take a moment just to highlight some of those and then we can work from there?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Rumba. And Mr. Leduc, thank you so much for our conversations on this matter. So in follow-up to our conversations, I have corresponded by email and I have reviewed preliminarily some municipal dumping and littering bylaws. And I do note that many municipalities do have these bylaws in place. There is not currently one in Warwick. So in my correspondence, I did say that should council wish, that was something we could look into and perhaps bring a report back to council if that was the direction council was looking to go. I also did advise, I do know Waste Management does do some education in our local schools to educate our youth about waste and recycling and littering. And perhaps that's something we could touch base with them on their program for and encourage that role for Waste Management and perhaps Blue Water Recycling Association as well. I did also advise Pete about our environmental cleanup days this year that we actually spearheaded through Parks and Recreation, a cleanup of our public spaces. We also saw some private businesses come together to do some cleanup on and around Environment Day this year. That was great. And we also talked a little bit about election sign bylaws. So, and the responsibility of the removal of signs being that of candidates. But of course, I did tell Pete that we'd be happy to be made aware as a municipality about election signs that don't comply, because we can always work with the candidates to address those issues as well. So in our conversations, Mayor Rumba, that's where we were at. And Mr. Leduc did want to come to council today to speak about his concerns. So thank you so much for coming, and I'm happy to answer questions of council as I can and as needed.
So is there interest from council in maybe having staff explore a bylaw that could be implemented? Councillor Westgate, you have a question.
Yeah, I was quite sure we had a dumping bylaw. It goes way, way back to when there was bag tags in town. I'm talking, we're talking 27 years ago now. And we did have problems in the county or in the township by dead end roads and alongside roads. And I was sure we had a bylaw, but maybe I am wrong. If we haven't, we should have one.
Amanda, do you want to speak to that?
I was just going to say, I never questioned Councillor Westgate's memory. So I did do a search on our dumping and littering bylaws, and I could not find one, although perhaps if it was pre-amalgamation, prior to 98, 99, I may not have found it in my search, but I perhaps, Councillor Westgate, you are correct, but I did look and I did not find one initially, but maybe I had to dig a bit deeper. Either way, we could refresh it if council wished.
Councillor White.
I support refreshing it. I think we should look at it. I agree with Mr. Leduc that, littering is a problem, and to highlight it to the people who are doing it, that it shouldn't be done in any way, I think is a great thing. So I would support reviewing it and possibly looking at signage on our roads, and as well getting others involved so that all the roads are covered, including the county roads that run through our community.
So can we take that as staff direction, Amanda, or would you like a formal resolution from council?
I think, Mayor Rumba, it's based on the resource allocation to do that kind of research and coordination with the county, that a resolution, perhaps to the effect that directing staff to explore and research a littering and dumping bylaw, coordinate with the county and report back to council would be appropriate.
All right, it looks to me like Councillor White would like to make that motion.
Amanda said.
All right, and Councillor Mitchell, did you want to second that?
Yes, indeed.
All right, any further discussion on that?
I wonder, should we maybe put a letter to Waste Management with some of Peter's highlights here and see if they can maybe come up with an environmental plan, like I think you mentioned about talking to the schools and that. I think if they had a PR person to do that, it would be great. Like I know Rotary just cleaned up one section of Churchill with the Boy Scouts, but it's hard to get the kids involved because of the liability issues regarding, but even if every landowner took a little bit of time and cleaned up their own property lines, we'd be done. And I appreciate the Public Works. When I put the tires, like Peter says, out on the side of the road, they disappear anyway. That's all I know. When I pull them out of the ditch and set them up, they're gone. So I appreciate Public Works doing that.
Councillor Mitchell.
The promotion of that environmentalism is something we take seriously with Scouts. We even get the little buggers out with like the beavers and cubs, the younger ones that maybe weren't involved in the Navi Road cleanup, but that's our favorite spring meeting. Get them out hiking around the ballpark and down the Waste Management Trail, and always promote.
I know we have talked to Louisa and Waste Management about having tours and things like that out at the Waste Management site, and they have done that in the past. Years ago, I can remember covering it with the paper where they had like the Girl Guides or the Scouts out and gave them a tour. But you're right. You're absolutely right. As a parent, I know education in the schools is the biggest promoter of this, and kids are the ones that bring that home to their parents, even with the fire drills. Like every time they come home and say, okay, we got to practice our fire drill. And it's that reminder constantly. So absolutely. It sounds to me like all of council agrees with you 100%, and we're willing to work with you and to make a difference. And we can even bring this to the county level. I'll talk to Amanda about getting an initiative going for the whole county, because I think it's important. I know Andrea Kanajan, she's the parliamentary assistant from the Ministry of Environment and Parks and Resources. She has started a litter collecting day as well, and Stephanie's on the line, but I know we as a council have promoted that as well. And the more we get out there about this, the better, I think. Peter, did you have more you want to comment on?
Yeah, I tried to put a lot of thought into this, but even I was talking to one of the neighbors on Forest Road, and not in Warwick Township, but just outside of our township, and he said, good thing is McDonald's moved to town in Petrolia. Bad thing is McDonald's moved to town in Petrolia. So I think we can take this to a number of different levels, like even approaching the owners and saying, either through either monetary or some kind of, a cleanup, because they are ultimately responsible. I mean, the stuff is supposed to go in the garbage, but the fact that they're putting it out there, it doesn't, so I think there's a long ways we can go with just a little bit of work. And like I said, I think I put it in there, like when I was collecting beer cans and beer bottles, and I was collecting pop cans and water bottles and everything else, sorting it out, bagging it, picking it up. But I was getting 300 beer cans a month. Now my sister is doing it. So if you had the beavers out and stuff like that, they could make a little money on the side. But anyways, it's, so maybe we can do is approach the provincial government and have them raise the tab on the beer can to 20 cents. I don't know. There's things like that. It's been at 10 cents for a long time. And I wouldn't care if I was buying a case of beer if I had to pay that, because I'm going to take my cans back and my bottles back, So there's a lot of things we can do with a little bit of effort, I think. So.
I know from the county level as well, even the province is now trying to get more spots for truckers to stop with waste and things like that, because we've seen on every overpass where there's the exits, there's just tons of garbage, right? So there is steps in place, but you're right. Every little bit can make a difference. Councillor Morris, did you have a comment?
We were at a conference, I guess, just before COVID, and wasn't the provincial government talking about making the manufacturers responsible for this garbage by putting a 10-cent levy on pop cans and all this? And I never heard any more of it.
It's a program that has been started by this provincial government. It's called Producer Responsibility, and it's more to do with the recycling side of things. So they're making the producer of the pop can responsible for the recycling. And this is going to be phased in over the next, depending on the next election and the results there and what happens. It's a political thing, but I know it's something that they're still working towards, and they're still trying to figure out how that program, but it's not so much to prevent litter as more making the producers responsible for producing something that can be recycled, as opposed to, you know, these things that just end up in the landfill. So, Peter? So,
yeah, in that regard too, you can look at other provinces like Newfoundland, for example. Like, you know, they bring back all your 2-liter pop bottles and everything else, right? I mean, you bring them back and there's a deposit on it. We don't do that in Ontario. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things that we could look at doing, and maybe some of them don't make sense, but I mean, awareness, like if you've got a bylaw and nobody knows you have a bylaw, like if the people in the township don't know that there's a bylaw, even if you have bylaws, you know,
you're right.
It doesn't.
Well, when council and staff don't know that there's a bylaw, then the bylaw is not being very effective, obviously.
So, and you're talking about the overpass on, like, I had that down here too, in the 402. If you go through the US and some parts of Canada, when you get off the off ramp from a major highway onto another highway, they have garbage bins there that are angled, so you know you can throw your garbage in as you're going by. You hardly even have to stop, you know. So we actually had some of them here for a little while, and they disappeared. So I don't know whether there was too much maintenance. You saw them; they were full. You know, these things were full. Even here on the 402 here, they were full, and garbage was laying beside them. So I think we have to get back to that. We've lost it. So. Anyways, I took more than my 10 minutes, sorry.
That's all right. We're always so grateful to hear from people in our community, especially people who are making the change that they want to see in the world, like yourself. It's fantastic. I appreciate everything that you've done to keep Churchill Line clean. And thank you so much for coming out. And we will be working towards making the improvements on this for sure.
The children can clean up the playgrounds. I do not want children on the highways cleaning up.
No, I agree with you on that. I know
it's a health hazard as well as a safety.
Yeah.
I don't want them on the public roads.
I know Our Lady Help of Christians have done cleanup days where they do the overnight starve-a-thon, and they've had kids out picking up garbage, but it was just here in town, right? There could be improvements around some of our businesses like Tim Hortons. I don't know how many times I've gone to the window and said, you need to send somebody out. There's all kinds of litter all along your drive-through and things like that. So yes, for sure. Okay. Thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate it.
It's really a nice building. They did a wonderful job here. So
yes, we're very happy with it, and we really appreciate you coming out, and you're welcome anytime at our table.
Thank you.
All right, council, we are at the point in the meeting where we can move on to our in-camera session. So we do need a motion, and we are going to be covering all of the things listed on the agenda. So we need a motion to move in camera, moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor White. Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, we appreciate your time and we wish you a very wonderful week. It looks like the weather's going to be great. We will be returning to open session, but just to adjourn the meeting and do bylaws. So for now, we will say goodbye.